It began with a question. Simple, direct, yet it carried the weight of decades. "Mr. DiCaprio," the prosecutor said, "can you tell the court what you saw at the residence of Sean Combs on the night of February 14th? The courtroom was still. The press leaned in. Even the judge's gavel seemed to tremble slightly. Leonardo DiCaprio adjusted the microphone, looked out at the jury, and said 6 words that detonated across the room. "This is what I saw there." DiCaprio didn't rush. He took a long breath, as if deciding how much truth the world was ready to hear. "It started as a party," he began. "Just another A-list gathering in the hills. Lights, music, champagne, the usual. But there was something off that night. You could feel it. People smiling too hard. Security watching too closely. I left early, and that might have saved me." His voice didn't shake, but his hands did. Slightly. Enough for the jury to notice. Then came the reveal. A fellow actor, unnamed in court for safety reasons, had pulled Leo aside days after that party. "You were lucky," the man had whispered. "You left early. Things go on at those parties that would destroy people if they ever came to light. It's not about drugs or celebrity, it's about control. It's about lists." Leo paused, looked at the prosecution and said, "He told me there was a list, a real one, of everyone who had ever been compromised at those parties. Everyone who had ever been filmed, coerced, or silenced." Gasps broke out. The judge called for order. DiCaprio continued. He'd seen evidence later. Blueprints of Diddy's mansion circulated quietly among a group chat of what Leo called concerned industry insiders. According to him, the renovations done on the estate weren't about expanding it for luxury. They were designed for something else. They built secret rooms, hidden cameras, surveillance centers. It wasn't a home, it was a trap. At this point, DiCaprio's testimony began to ripple through the courtroom, like thunder rolling across a field. "I didn't want to believe it," he said. "But then one night, I got lost looking for a bathroom. I wandered too far. I went down a hallway that wasn't meant to be found." He described what he saw in painful detail. A narrow corridor, beneath the main floor, lined with steel doors. Behind one of them, he heard something that would stay with him forever. Crying. Leo stopped. He gripped the microphone. It was a girl. Sitting on the floor, knees to her chest. Crying. She looked terrified. I cracked the door open and asked if she was okay. She shook her head. Before I could do anything, a man grabbed me from behind, slammed the door shut, and said, "Wrong floor, Mr. DiCaprio. You didn't see nothing." The courtroom was silent. Even the defense looked shaken. "He tried to report it," he said, but no one listened. Studios didn't want to hear it. Journalists wouldn't touch it. Even my own reps told me to let it go. He described spiraling emotionally, isolating himself, feeling haunted. For months, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing her face. I kept wondering if she was okay, or if she ever made it out. But the most powerful moment came when the prosecution asked, "Mr. DiCaprio, did you ever hear the term the lighthouse in relation to these events?" A chill swept the room. Leo nodded. "It was a code," he said. "A nickname for Diddy's inner circle. A place where the light saw everything, but only the chosen few were allowed to look in." The term had surfaced during a private conversation with a music executive. "You've been to the lighthouse," the man had said. "Now you know." The room shifted again when DiCaprio mentioned a powerful name, Barack Obama. "I never saw him at the house," Leo clarified, "but I saw him with Diddy, at fundraisers, events, after parties. Once I saw someone from Obama's team receive an envelope from Diddy. I don't know what was in it, but it wasn't nothing." The court gasped. DiCaprio stressed that he did not believe Obama was involved, but he said, "It's hard to believe someone that powerful never heard the whispers." And the whispers had become screams in Leo's mind. He recalled a joke someone made at a 2016 gala. "Don't let Diddy bring the lighthouse to D.C." Everyone laughed, except Obama, who simply smiled and walked away. That moment stayed with Leo. He didn't laugh. He knew. Or he didn't want to know. The prosecutor asked why he hadn't come forward sooner. Because I was scared, Leo said. Not for my career, for my life. He told the court that after seeing the girl in the basement, he became paranoid. I had my house swept for bugs. I stopped going to events. I kept the lights on for weeks. The jury watched, transfixed, as the mask of a Hollywood icon cracked before their eyes. Then came the sealed envelope. The moment Leo saw it, he whispered, "Is that the file?" Inside were messages, screenshots, notes, evidence collected over the years. "This was given to me by a former assistant to a record executive," Leo explained. "She was shaking when she gave it to me. She said, 'If I disappear, give this to someone who can't be silenced.'" The contents were damning. Timestamps, names of underage individuals who were allegedly trafficked through Diddy's estate, security logs, party footage, metadata. Leo refused to say most of their names. "They deserve peace," he said. "Some of them are still trying to live." But one name in the file was redacted and referred to as Hope. DiCaprio read aloud one of her messages. "If anyone ever learns what he did to us, they'll bury him. But they'll bury us too. I just want someone to say it, even if no one believes it." DiCaprio looked up and said, "That's why I'm here." The judge called for a short recess. No one moved. Diddy sat rigid at the defense table, his face pale, his jaw tight. He whispered to his lawyers. One of them slammed a binder closed. Another requested a sidebar. It was clear something had shifted. The jury looked different now, not just attentive, but activated. When court resumed, the prosecution asked Leo for one final statement. He stood, took a long breath, and said, "I'm not here because I hate Sean Combs. I'm here because someone has to be. This trial isn't about music. It's about power. About what happens when the most powerful man in the room thinks no one will ever say no." Then he turned directly to Diddy. "You once told me all people care about is the party. Well, the party's over, and now it's time to clean up the mess." Gasps echoed through the room. Diddy muttered under his breath, caught by a hot mic, "None of this is real, they're all actors." Leo responded quietly without breaking eye contact. "Then you finally understand what it's like to be in one of my films. Only this time you don't get a script." As the judge adjourned for the day, reporters rushed from the room. DiCaprio exited under heavy security. Some people applauded. Some stared. But one thing was undeniable. A door had opened. And there was no closing it now. This wasn't just a testimony. It was a reckoning. And it had only just begun. As the sun set over downtown Los Angeles that evening, helicopters swarmed above the federal courthouse like vultures sensing the end of a long and blood-soaked hunt. The streets were lined with protesters, journalists, and ordinary people who had once treated the lives of celebrities like distant fairy tales. But now, that glittering world of parties and premieres had curdled into something grotesque, and the entire world was watching it collapse in real time. Inside the courthouse, Leonardo DiCaprio sat in a dimly lit holding room, waiting for the U.S. Marshals to escort him to a secure vehicle. His testimony had detonated like a nuclear blast, not just against Diddy, but across the entire ecosystem that protected him. Already, Twitter and Instagram were flooded with hashtags like Arch Diddy trial, Josh Hollywood is over, and most hauntingly, where's Hope? The mysterious girl Leo had mentioned, now transformed into a symbol of all those lost in the shadows of the industry. But Leo didn't feel victorious. He felt hollow. He had done what no one else dared to do. But he knew the war was far from over. "You think people will care tomorrow?" he asked his attorney quietly. "Or will it just become another meme?" The lawyer didn't answer. They both knew the machine they were up against, and it was relentless. Meanwhile, Diddy sat in his private holding cell beneath the courthouse. Not officially detained yet, but separated for his own protection. His lawyers were on the phone, yelling into multiple burners, contacting power players, media heads, and PR teams. But the usual tricks weren't working. News anchors were refusing to repeat the press releases. Celebrities who once posted vague support were now deleting their photos with him. Even a few of his own protégés had unfollowed him within hours, but perhaps the most damning blow came from the White House. A carefully worded statement from the president's press secretary appeared on live television. The administration is watching the case with deep concern. Any association with Mr. Combs predating these revelations does not reflect an endorsement of his alleged actions. It was the political equivalent of cutting the cord, and Diddy knew it. Back at Leonardo's home, a secluded estate in Malibu surrounded by security, the actor's mother waited anxiously with a rosary in her hand. "I told him not to get involved," she whispered to a friend. "But he said if he didn't do it, no one would." She wasn't a religious woman, but that night, she prayed for her son's safety, like she never had before. And then came the leak. At 2:37 a.m., a Reddit user dropped what they claimed to be surveillance footage from inside Diddy's mansion. Blurry, time-stamped, and watermarked with internal code, the video showed individuals being escorted through hidden hallways, blindfolded, some resisting, some appearing drugged. Within 10 minutes, the footage was mirrored across every platform. The lighthouse wasn't just a metaphor anymore. It was real, and the world had seen it. Investigators scrambled to verify the footage, but the public didn't wait. Thousands flooded the FBI tip lines, claiming to have attended parties at the estate, offering new leads, names, and locations of others who had been silenced. Journalists who had stayed silent for years suddenly found their spines. Anonymous sources from within Bad Boy Entertainment, Revolt TV, and even Rock Nation started coming forward, all pointing toward a sprawling conspiracy of blackmail, surveillance, and ritualistic exploitation. Still, Leo knew the danger wasn't over. In fact, it was escalating. That morning, an SUV following his security detail was pulled over. Inside were two armed men with fake press credentials. They weren't paparazzi, the marshal told Leo. They were either hired muscle or worse. From then on, Leo's home was put under federal protection. "You're not a witness anymore," his handler told him. "You're the detonator." The next court session was rescheduled due to security concerns, but speculation was rampant that more witnesses were ready to come forward, and that one of them was a woman tied to the entertainment elite who had been blackmailed into silence for years. Beyoncé's name was trending. Jay-Z's silence was deafening. Hollywood was in full collapse. Talent agencies scrambled to scrub websites. Old contracts were reviewed. Lawyers worked overtime, preparing preemptive statements and NDAs. But the blood was already in the water, and the sharks were circling. Talk shows began airing segments like What Did They Know? And The Fall of Fame. Some former insiders even began confessing on YouTube, old assistants, stylists, security guards, corroborating Leo's timeline and descriptions. One even showed blueprints of the mansion's underground rooms. But through all the chaos, there was one moment that would live forever in the public consciousness. A handwritten letter arrived at the courthouse, no return address, but postmarked from a small town in Georgia. Inside was a photo of a young woman, sitting cross-legged in a basement, eyes swollen, mouth gagged. A note was attached. "I am Hope. He wasn't lying. Tell him, thank you." When prosecutors showed the letter to Leo, he broke down. Not on camera, not on the stand, but in a quiet conference room, away from the spectacle, he sobbed like a child. "She's alive," he whispered. "She made it." That moment, raw, broken, and human, said more than any testimony could. This wasn't just about taking down Diddy. It was about the forgotten ones, the hidden victims, the ones the industry had erased, and it was only the beginning. Investigations spread to other moguls. Artists began canceling tours and deleting collaborations. Some insiders started naming names in interviews. The entertainment empire was no longer untouchable. It was bleeding. And no amount of PR magic could stop the hemorrhaging. As Leo stepped back into court days later, this time flanked by federal agents, a reporter asked him, "Do you think you've changed the world?" He paused, then answered, "I didn't change it. I just showed people what it really looked like." The courtroom doors closed behind him, but for the first time in decades, the lights stayed on.